Have you ever been intimate with him? We've had intimate kisses. You got a husband and a whole child. He's a child. Albany, Georgia. A viral high school cheerleading coach finds a new kind of internet fame when a photo of her kissing a 17-year-old student begins circulating online. As investigators work to uncover the truth behind the image, the case veers toward a shocking conclusion no one saw coming. If I drop it, I'm going to have to get paid for that. The following is based on official police records and court proceedings. All persons charged with a crime are presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in a court of law. August 2020. Monroe Comprehensive High School, Albany, Georgia. During the pandemic, when students struggled with isolation, teacher Audrianna Cobb-Williams found a way to connect. She participated in a motivational rap video that went viral, earning praise from her community and attention from media outlets across the country. For years, Mrs. Williams had built a reputation as the kind of teacher students gravitated toward. Energetic, approachable, someone who went beyond lesson plans to form real connections. But on December 13, 2023, that positive attention took a devastating turn. An officer with the Dougherty County School System Police Department received a photograph. The image showed the 31-year-old teacher kissing a 17-year-old student. As the photo circulated online, rumors began spreading throughout the community. The investigation had begun. The reason we're here today is that there's an allegation of you having an affair with the teacher. Will you tell me about that? Yes, sir. Tell me about it. The student's explanation was simple. It was just online kissing, but it was a prank. We ran into each other at the store. You know what store it was at? Home Depot. And how did y'all meet up at Home Depot? As investigators pressed deeper, the story began to unravel. What started as a viral photograph would expose a web of contradictions, troubling allegations, and a case that would divide an entire community. December 13, 2023. Investigators moved quickly. The photograph was clear enough to raise immediate concerns. Mrs. Williams, a married mother and respected educator, appeared to be engaged in an intimate moment with a student nearly half her age. School administrators placed her on administrative leave. The Dougherty County School System Police Department opened a formal inquiry. 5 days later, investigators brought the 17-year-old student in for questioning. His mother accompanied him. The detective's question was direct. Tell me about the affair. The student's response was casual, almost dismissive. He characterized the kiss as a prank, something that happened spontaneously at a Home Depot while shopping for Christmas trees. It was just online kissing, but it was a prank. But the timeline didn't align. Videos posted to Mrs. Williams' TikTok account showed her shopping at Home Depot on November 24, 2023, roughly 3 weeks before the investigation began. The footage showed her excitedly browsing Christmas trees, documenting ordinary holiday moments. What wasn't ordinary was what investigators would soon uncover about that shopping trip. When Mrs. Williams sat down for her own interview, her version of events shifted the narrative entirely. When I saw him in the store, we walked in, we talked. We do have a very close relationship. We walked and talked in the store, took a little selfie, took a couple selfies, and he leaned in for a kiss. She paused. What I did not do was push him away or stop him. The detective pressed further about the nature of the kiss. That kiss wasn't like a smack. That was a kiss. Mrs. Williams acknowledged the observation. It was a kiss. My mouth wasn't open. The investigation was just beginning. The more investigators questioned both parties, the more their stories contradicted each other and themselves. The first major inconsistency emerged regarding how they ended up at Home Depot together. Initially, both claimed they happened to run into each other. The student said he was there with a friend, shopping for a Christmas tree, when he saw his coach. Mrs. Williams said she was shopping alone and coincidentally encountered him. But when pressed, the truth came out. Did you pick him up to go to Home Depot? Yes. You picked him up to go to Home Depot with you? Yes. Why did you pick him up? Because I was friends with his mom. I needed help picking up some stuff from the store. Text messages recovered from the student's phone told a different story. In an exchange with his mother, he wrote, "Can I go with Coach Williams?" His mother responded, "Where?" "To get a tree for her house." She gave permission. Okay, the messages revealed something troubling. This wasn't a chance encounter. This was a planned meeting between a teacher and a student off school grounds, coordinated through private communication. Additional text exchanges showed multiple instances where the two arranged to meet outside of school. The nature of their relationship was extending beyond the classroom, beyond coaching, beyond any acceptable boundary between educator and minor. But how far beyond those boundaries had things actually gone? That question would drive the rest of the investigation. 5 days after her interview, on December 19, 2023, Audrianna Cobb-Williams was arrested. The investigation was far from over. The most serious allegations were yet to come. As investigators dug deeper, a troubling pattern emerged, one that extended far beyond a single photograph. The legal framework was clear. Under Georgia law, specifically OCGA Section 16-6-5.1, any person who has supervisory or disciplinary authority over a minor and engages in inappropriate contact can be charged with contact by employee or agent. The law exists specifically to protect students from those in positions of power over them. The evidence investigators collected fell into several categories. First, photographic evidence. The original image, the one that sparked the investigation, was taken by Mrs. Williams herself on her personal iPad. The photograph circulating online was a cell phone capture of that original. Mrs. Williams claimed the photo was leaked by a former cheer manager she had fired for being messy with a lot of my cheerleaders, spreading a lot of drama and lies. He didn't know how to let that go, she told investigators. But the photograph was just the beginning. Investigators recovered additional images from various devices. Screenshots of FaceTime conversations between Mrs. Williams and the student. In at least one instance, the student appeared without a shirt during their video call. The nature of these conversations went far beyond what anyone would consider appropriate between a teacher and student. Second, testimonial evidence from both parties. During her interview, Mrs. Williams made a significant admission. We would talk on the phone. I guess we started to have feelings for each other that led to having conversations about things we would do, but never did. The detective's question was direct. Have you ever been intimate with him? We've had intimate kisses. When asked specifically about physical relations, she firmly denied it. No, but she added a troubling qualifier. We've talked about it, though. The student told a different story. When first asked if anything beyond kissing had occurred, he said no. But when the question was posed again, his answer changed dramatically. Have you had oral contact with her? After a long pause, the student responded, Yes, sir. The location, he claimed, was in Mrs. Williams' vehicle, behind a Marathon gas station, sometime in November 2023. Third, video evidence. One video showed the 17-year-old student driving Mrs. Williams' personal vehicle with her in the passenger seat. Notably, she appeared to be wearing what looked like a student Letterman jacket, an image that underscored the inappropriate nature of their relationship. Fourth, witness testimony. According to police records, investigators spoke with a friend of the student. The witness claimed that he and the student had taken Mrs. Williams' vehicle to a Wendy's restaurant. They missed the bus to a basketball game. While the witness was still in the car, Mrs. Williams called the student. The phone connected through the vehicle's Bluetooth system, allowing the conversation to play through the speakers. According to the witness, during that call, the student asked Mrs. Williams for oral contact in exchange for driving her vehicle. When confronted with this allegation, Mrs. Williams said she had no recollection of such a conversation. Would you be surprised that he recorded that conversation? Their children, probably, Mrs. Williams responded. However, police records indicated the conversation was overheard by the witness, but not actually recorded. Despite being told otherwise, Mrs. Williams maintained she had no memory of this exchange. The student confirmed the witness's account. Fifth, Mrs. Williams' acknowledgement of inappropriate behavior. When asked about her relationship with the student, she admitted to investigators, "That's me being careless, not having any boundaries, being stupid." She acknowledged that their relationship had crossed lines, even while denying the most serious allegations. Finally, how their relationship began. The student told investigators that Mrs. Williams had started showing him special attention at school. During homecoming preparations, she asked him what kind of snacks he liked and bought them specifically for him. "We started from there," he said. Phone records, text messages, FaceTime screenshots, witness statements, admissions from both parties. All of it showed a relationship that had violated the fundamental trust between educator and student. On August 15, 2024, a grand jury returned an indictment. Audrianna Cobb-Williams was formally charged with 2 counts of inappropriate contact by employee or agent in the first degree. Count 1 alleged she knowingly kissed the student. Count 2 alleged more serious physical contact. Mrs. Williams entered a plea of not guilty to both counts. The case was heading to trial. As the case moved toward trial, the conflicting accounts created a complex legal landscape. The prosecution faced a significant challenge. Much of their case rested on the testimony of a teenage witness whose story had already changed multiple times. During the initial investigation, the student's mother sat beside him as detectives pressed for details. Her concern was evident. "You have to be honest. This is a big allegation that's being made. You have to tell these people the truth." The student's evolving answers created credibility issues. First, he claimed the kiss was just a prank. Then he admitted they had developed feelings for each other. Initially, he denied any physical contact beyond kissing. Later, he alleged oral contact had occurred. These inconsistencies would become a focal point for the defense. Mrs. Williams, for her part, maintained a consistent position on the most serious allegations. She admitted to the kiss. She acknowledged inappropriate conversations. She confessed to having feelings for the student and discussing potential physical involvement. But she drew a firm line. Nothing beyond kissing had occurred. "We talked about it. We were going to, but we didn't." The defense strategy became clear. Acknowledge the inappropriate boundary violations while vigorously denying the criminal conduct alleged in the remaining charge. In the months leading up to trial, the prosecution made 2 separate plea deal offers. According to court records, both offers would have allowed Mrs. Williams to avoid prison time in exchange for pleading guilty to reduced charges. Such agreements typically involve probation, registration requirements, and loss of teaching credentials. Mrs. Williams declined both offers. The decision signaled her legal team's confidence, or perhaps her unwillingness to accept the lifelong consequences that come with pleading guilty to any charge involving a minor. Then came a significant legal development. The defense filed a motion to dismiss Count 1, the charge alleging she knowingly kissed the student. Georgia law defines inappropriate contact by an employee under OCGA Section 16-6-5.1 very specifically. The statute requires that the conduct meet the definition of explicit conduct under Georgia Code Section 16-12-100. That definition includes specific acts, contact with specified body parts, certain physical positions, and particular types of contact clearly intended for gratification. The defense argued that kissing, while inappropriate and a violation of professional ethics, did not meet this narrow legal definition. The judge agreed. Count 1 was quashed, dismissed before trial. The prosecution would proceed only on Count 2, the more serious allegation of oral contact. This ruling was a major victory for the defense. It meant the jury would never hear about the kiss that started the entire investigation. The photograph that went viral, the image that launched the case. It would be irrelevant to the criminal charges the jury would consider. The trial would hinge entirely on one question. Did physical contact beyond kissing occur, and could the prosecution prove it beyond a reasonable doubt? The credibility battle was set. On one side, a teenage student whose story had changed, whose motivations might be questioned, whose memory of specific dates and details was admittedly hazy. On the other, a 31-year-old educator who admitted to profound lapses in judgment but denied criminal conduct. And then, just before trial, a recorded phone conversation surfaced, an explosive twist to an already volatile case. The student was speaking with an unidentified female. Their conversation was captured on a recorded line, standard practice for certain monitored calls. The female asked about the upcoming trial. What's the trial about now? What are they trying to do? The student's response was casual, almost detached. Do you want her to go to jail? There was a pause. You want the truth or the lie? I want the truth. His answer was chilling in its transactional nature. I don't, but at the same time, I just don't give a damn. Then came the statement that would become central to the defense's strategy. I want to drop the case, but she was talking. I was going to need that. I'm going to need a band a week out here. The woman seemed confused. A band a week? You want her to pay you to drop it? If I drop it, I'm going to have to get paid for that. She's going to have to pay me for that. The implication was clear. The student was allegedly suggesting he would drop the case in exchange for $1,000 per week. You're trying to tell her that she needs to pay you a band a week to drop you? I would, but it's too late. The defense now had recorded evidence suggesting the complaining witness had attempted to extort money from the defendant. This phone call would become a cornerstone of the defense strategy, not just to attack the student's credibility, but to suggest an alternative motive for his allegations entirely. Was this a case about an educator who violated her position of trust? Or was it about a teenager who saw an opportunity for financial gain after an inappropriate but consensual relationship was exposed? The prosecution would argue that the extortion attempt, if that's what it was, came after the fact. A desperate move by a young person grappling with the consequences of being in a situation with someone in authority. The defense would present it as evidence of fabrication from the beginning. As October 2025 approached, both sides prepared for a trial that would force a jury to decide whose version of events to believe. The community watched and waited. If you're finding this detailed examination compelling, consider subscribing. We bring you comprehensive breakdowns of cases that challenge our understanding of justice, accountability, and truth. These investigations take significant time and resources to research properly. Your support allows us to continue this work. October 28, 2025. Dougherty County Superior Court. The trial of Audrianna Cobb-Williams began with intense public scrutiny, the kind that only high-profile cases involving educators and students attract. The courtroom filled with spectators, members of the community who had followed the case since that photograph first went viral nearly 2 years earlier. Jury selection moved forward. Both sides carefully examined potential jurors for bias. The defense needed jurors who could separate inappropriate behavior from criminal conduct. The prosecution needed jurors who understood the power dynamics inherent in teacher-student relationships. After a methodical selection process, a jury was seated. 12 individuals who would decide whether the state had proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. The prosecution's opening statement laid out their theory. This wasn't about a single photograph. This wasn't about a momentary lapse in judgment. This was about a 31-year-old educator who systematically groomed a 17-year-old student, manipulating her position of authority to engage in criminal conduct. The evidence, they argued, would show a pattern of escalating behavior. Private text messages, off-campus meetings, intimate FaceTime calls, conversations that crossed every professional boundary, and ultimately, physical contact that violated Georgia law. The student would testify. The witness who overheard the conversation in the vehicle would testify. The recorded phone call would speak for itself, but the prosecution would frame it as a young person grappling with trauma, not evidence of fabrication. The defense's opening statement took a different approach. They didn't deny that Mrs. Williams had exercised poor judgment. They didn't deny that boundaries were crossed. What they denied was criminal conduct. The defense acknowledged that Mrs. Williams had admitted to kissing the student. She had admitted to inappropriate conversations. She had admitted to feelings that never should have developed. But admission of poor judgment is not the same as commission of a crime. The defense pointed to the student's changing story, his inability to recall specific dates or times, the fact that he initially denied anything beyond a kiss occurred, only to change his testimony when pressed. And then there was the recorded phone call. Evidence, the defense would argue, that the student was motivated not by truth, but by money. The prosecution would have to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And when the evidence was examined closely, the defense argued, reasonable doubt would be everywhere. The first witness called was the investigating detective. He walked the jury through the timeline. The photograph that triggered everything. The interviews with both the student and Mrs. Williams. The text messages recovered. The witness statements. On cross-examination, the defense focused on inconsistencies. Detective, when you first asked the student if anything beyond kissing had occurred, what did he say? He said no. And when did his answer change? When I asked the question a second time. Did he offer an explanation for why his answer changed? No. Did he provide specific dates for when this alleged conduct occurred? He said it was sometime in November, but he couldn't recall the exact date. Did he provide a specific location? He said it was in Mrs. Williams' vehicle behind a Marathon gas station. Did investigators search that location for any physical evidence? No. Were there any security cameras at that location that might have corroborated his account? We didn't locate any footage. The defense was establishing a theme. Allegations without corroboration. The next witness was the student's friend, the one who claimed to have overheard the phone conversation in Mrs. Williams' vehicle. He recounted being in the car when they missed the bus to the basketball game. He described hearing Mrs. Williams call through the Bluetooth system. He testified that he heard the student ask her for oral contact in exchange for driving. On cross-examination, the defense attacked the specifics. You said this conversation happened through the car's Bluetooth system? Yes. So both you and the student could hear Mrs. Williams on the speakers? Yes. Did you record this conversation? No. Did you tell anyone about what you heard that day? Not right away. How long after the conversation did you first report it? When investigators contacted me about the case. So you didn't report this alleged conversation to any school official, any parent, or any authority figure when it happened? No. And you're asking this jury to believe that you heard a teacher proposition a student for a criminal act, and you said nothing? The witness's credibility was being challenged, just as the student's would be. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The student took the stand. He appeared nervous as he was sworn in. The prosecutor led him through his testimony carefully. He described meeting Mrs. Williams through her cheerleading program, the special attention she paid him, the snacks she bought specifically for him during homecoming, the way their relationship evolved from teacher-student to something more personal. He testified about the text messages, the FaceTime calls, the meeting at Home Depot that resulted in the photograph. And then he testified about what allegedly happened in her vehicle behind the Marathon gas station. His testimony was detailed, but when the prosecutor asked for specifics, exact dates, exact times, his answers became vague. It was sometime in November, I think. I'm not sure what day of the week it was. I can't remember if it was morning or afternoon. The prosecution worked to rehabilitate the testimony, suggesting that trauma often affects memory of specific details while leaving the core events intact. But on cross-examination, the defense was relentless. You initially told investigators that nothing beyond kissing occurred, correct? Yes. That was a lie. I wasn't ready to talk about everything yet. So you lied to police during a criminal investigation? I guess so. And you expect this jury to believe you're telling the truth now. The defense then introduced the recorded phone conversation. The audio played in the courtroom. The student's voice, unmistakably discussing dropping the case in exchange for payment. That's your voice on that recording, correct? Yes. You said, if I drop it, I'm going to have to get paid for that, correct? Yes, but you said Mrs. Williams would have to pay you $1,000 a week, correct? I was just talking. I didn't mean. Were you just talking when you testified here today? The prosecution objected. The judge sustained it. But the damage was done. The defense then called Mrs. Williams to the stand. She testified that she had made terrible mistakes. She acknowledged that she had developed inappropriate feelings for the student. She admitted to conversations that should never have happened between an educator and a minor. But she firmly denied that any physical contact beyond kissing had occurred. We talked about it. We discussed things that, looking back, I'm ashamed we ever discussed. But talking about something and doing it are two different things. The prosecutor challenged her on cross-examination. You picked him up from his home and drove him to Home Depot? Yes. You allowed him to drive your vehicle? Yes. You engaged in FaceTime conversations where he appeared without a shirt. Yes. You admitted to having feelings for a 17-year-old student. Yes. You admitted to kissing him. Yes. But you're asking this jury to believe that the relationship never progressed beyond that. Because it didn't. I drew a line that I wouldn't cross, and I didn't cross it. The prosecution presented Mrs. Williams as someone who had already admitted to crossing multiple lines, arguing that her denials about this final line lacked credibility. The defense presented her as someone who had been honest about her mistakes, even when those admissions were humiliating and professionally devastating, which actually bolstered her credibility when she denied the most serious allegation. Both sides rested. Closing arguments began. The prosecution argued that the pattern of behavior, the escalation, the student's testimony, and the witness corroboration all pointed to guilt. Yes, the student had lied initially, but that's what victims do when they're scared, ashamed, and not ready to confront what happened to them. The defense argued that the prosecution's entire case rested on the uncorroborated testimony of a witness who had lied to police, changed his story multiple times, couldn't recall basic details, and was caught on tape attempting to extort money from the defendant. If you believe him, the defense attorney told the jury, then convict. But if you have reasonable doubt, and how can you not have reasonable doubt given everything you've heard, then you must acquit. The judge instructed the jury on the law. They would need to find beyond a reasonable doubt that Mrs. Williams, while in a position of supervisory authority over the student, engaged in the specific conduct alleged. The jury retired to deliberate. The wait began. Portion 7. Verdict and aftermath, 16 to 1830. The deliberations were surprisingly brief. In cases involving conflicting testimony, juries often spend hours, sometimes days, carefully weighing the evidence. They review testimony. They debate credibility. They work through reasonable doubt. This jury reached a verdict quickly. Court reconvened. The jury filed back into the courtroom. Mrs. Williams stood beside her attorney, her face unreadable. The judge addressed the foreperson. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. The verdict form was handed to the judge, who reviewed it and passed it to the clerk. On the charge of inappropriate contact by employee or agent in the first degree, how do you find the defendant? A pause that seemed to stretch forever. Not guilty. The courtroom erupted. Some gasped in shock. Others nodded as if they'd expected this outcome all along. Mrs. Williams collapsed into her attorney's arms, overcome with emotion. The student sat in the gallery, his expression blank. His mother beside him, visibly upset. After less than a full day of deliberation, the jury had found reasonable doubt. In post-trial interviews with media outlets, jurors who agreed to speak explained their reasoning. The credibility issues were insurmountable. The student's changing story, his inability to provide specifics, the recorded conversation about payment. It all created too much doubt. One juror stated that while they believed inappropriate behavior had occurred, the state hadn't met its burden of proving the specific criminal conduct charged. Another juror noted that Mrs. Williams' willingness to admit to other inappropriate behavior actually made her denial of this specific act more believable. If she was willing to admit to so much else, why would she lie about this? The recorded phone call, multiple jurors said, was a turning point. It raised questions about motive that the prosecution never adequately answered. The verdict meant Mrs. Williams would not face prison time. She would not be required to register. Legally, she had been cleared. But the court of public opinion is not bound by reasonable doubt. According to multiple news sources, Mrs. Williams had already resigned from her teaching position in lieu of termination. Her career as an educator was over, regardless of the jury's verdict. The Georgia Professional Standards Commission, which licenses teachers, can still pursue disciplinary action based on conduct that violates professional ethics, even if it doesn't rise to the level of criminal conduct. For the student, the aftermath was equally complicated. He had testified in a public trial about deeply personal matters. The recorded conversation would follow him. The questions about his credibility would linger. His mother, who had sat beside him during that initial police interview, expressed concern about how the case had affected her son. I don't want repercussions for my son because of what happened, she had told investigators early in the case. Now those repercussions were unavoidable. The community response was divided. Some believed the jury got it right, that without corroborating physical evidence, without consistent testimony, conviction would have been unjust. Others believed the power dynamics made the student's testimony inherently credible, that the jury had failed to understand how authority figures manipulate and intimidate victims into silence, confusion, and contradictory statements. Some focused on the undisputed facts. A 31-year-old married teacher developed feelings for a 17-year-old student, picked him up from his home, kissed him, discussed engaging in physical relations with him, maintained private contact that violated every professional boundary. Even if the most serious allegation couldn't be proven beyond reasonable doubt, hadn't enough been proven to warrant accountability? The legal system had spoken, not guilty, but the broader questions remained unanswered. The case of Audrianna Cobb-Williams forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. Questions about justice, about truth, about accountability. In the American legal system, not guilty does not mean innocent. It means the prosecution did not meet its burden of proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a critical distinction, one that matters deeply in a case like this. The jury's verdict answered a specific legal question. Did the state prove that Mrs. Williams engaged in the specific criminal conduct charged? The jury said no. But the verdict did not, and could not, answer the broader moral and ethical questions the case raises. What responsibility do educators have to maintain absolute boundaries with students, even when feelings develop? How do we balance the legal presumption of innocence with the social responsibility to protect minors from those in positions of power over them? When a student's testimony is inconsistent, how do we distinguish between the natural confusion of trauma and the deliberate deception of fabrication? And perhaps most troubling, what happens when the legal definition of a crime is so specific that conduct everyone agrees was inappropriate falls outside its boundaries? The judge's decision to dismiss the kissing charge before trial illustrated this tension perfectly. Everyone agreed the kiss happened. Mrs. Williams admitted it. The photograph documented it. But under Georgia's legal definition, a kiss, no matter how inappropriate, did not meet the statutory requirements for the charged offense. This case also highlights the challenge of prosecuting cases that rely heavily on the testimony of teenage witnesses. Teenagers are not perfect witnesses. Their memories may be imprecise. They may be embarrassed or ashamed about events they were involved in. They may struggle to articulate timelines or specifics. They may initially minimize what happened before eventually disclosing the full truth. All of these factors can be consistent with genuine victimization, but they're also consistent with fabrication, exaggeration, or confusion. Juries are asked to sort through these possibilities and determine what happened beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a difficult task with significant consequences. The recorded phone conversation added another layer of complexity. Was it evidence of a calculated scheme to extort money from the beginning? Or was it the confused reaction of a young person who didn't know how to process what had happened to him? Context matters, but context can also be manipulated. What we know for certain is this. A teacher developed feelings for a student. She admitted this. She engaged in private contact with that student outside of school. This is documented. She picked him up from his home and took him to retail locations. This is admitted. She kissed him. This is admitted and photographed. She discussed engaging in physical relations with him. This is admitted. These facts alone represent a profound violation of the trust placed in educators. They represent a failure to maintain the professional boundaries that protect students from exploitation. Whether additional conduct occurred, conduct that would meet Georgia's specific legal definition of criminal behavior, was a question the jury answered in Mrs. Williams' favor. But the undisputed facts still show serious misconduct. The case also raises questions about how schools identify and respond to inappropriate relationships before they escalate. Were there warning signs that were missed? Did anyone notice the level of personal attention Mrs. Williams was paying to this student? Did anyone question why a teacher was maintaining private contact with a student outside of school? These are questions that school districts across the country grapple with constantly. The signs aren't always obvious. Teachers who groom students often do so gradually, in ways that can seem innocent at first. A little extra attention here, a helpful gesture there. Before anyone realizes what's happening, boundaries have been crossed. And once those boundaries are crossed, the damage is done, regardless of what a jury decides years later. The aftermath of this case will continue to develop. Mrs. Williams may have been acquitted of criminal charges, but her career is over. Her reputation is permanently damaged. Her family has been affected. These are consequences she will carry regardless of the verdict. The student faces his own challenges. Public testimony, questions about his credibility, the recorded conversation that will be part of the public record indefinitely, the scrutiny that comes with being at the center of a case like this. Both lives have been fundamentally altered by the events that began with a photograph taken at a Home Depot in November 2023. The case serves as a reminder of why professional boundaries exist. They're not just arbitrary rules created to make educators' jobs harder. They're protections. Protections for students who are inherently vulnerable in relationships with those who have authority over them. And protections for educators who must maintain trust in order to do their jobs effectively. When those boundaries are crossed, everyone loses. Students lose the safe learning environment they deserve. Educators lose the trust of their communities. Families are torn apart. Schools are forced to implement stricter policies that can sometimes make genuine mentorship more difficult. The ripple effects extend far beyond the individuals directly involved. And in cases like this one, where the legal outcome doesn't align with what many people believe the moral outcome should be, those ripple effects include a loss of faith in the justice system itself. Some will see this verdict as proof that the system works, that juries take their responsibility seriously, that they don't convict without sufficient evidence, that reasonable doubt means something. Others will see it as proof that the system is broken, that victims aren't believed, that people in positions of power can escape consequences, that justice isn't truly served. Both perspectives contain elements of truth. The legal system provided one answer in this case. The jury found reasonable doubt based on the evidence presented and the legal standards they were required to apply. But the broader lessons about power, boundaries, and responsibility remain for all of us to consider. We need to do better at teaching young people about healthy relationships and unhealthy power dynamics. We need to do better at training educators about boundary maintenance. We need to do better at creating school environments where inappropriate behavior is identified and addressed before it escalates. We need to do better at supporting victims who come forward, while also protecting the rights of the accused. We need to do better at having honest conversations about these cases instead of retreating into our predetermined positions. These are hard conversations, but they're necessary ones. Because cases like this one will keep happening unless we're willing to confront the uncomfortable truths they reveal about our institutions, our legal system, and ourselves. What's your view on how this case was handled? The comments section is open for thoughtful discussion. We're interested in hearing different perspectives on the legal outcome, the evidence presented, and the broader implications for cases like this. If you want more in-depth examinations of cases that challenge our understanding of justice and accountability, subscribe to this channel. We invest significant time researching court records, police documents, and verified sources to bring you comprehensive analysis you won't find elsewhere. Hit the notification bell to stay updated on new cases as we release them. We cover a wide range of criminal cases, legal proceedings, and investigations that raise important questions about how our justice system works. And if you found value in this investigation, consider sharing it with others who appreciate detailed, fact-based documentary content. These are the stories that need to be told, examined, and discussed. Not sensationalized, but understood. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.